The chopsticks in Jackie Chan's hand froze midway to his mouth when three men in black suits walked through the door of the small noodle shop in Causeway Bay. Their eyes locked onto him immediately, and Jackie knew this wasn't a coincidence. These weren't fans asking for autographs. These were Triad soldiers, and they had found him. The year was 1993, and Jackie Chan was at the peak of his career. Police Story had made him an international sensation, and his death-defying stunts had earned him the respect of audiences worldwide. But tonight, in this humble Hong Kong eatery, where he'd been quietly enjoying a bowl of wonton noodles after a grueling 16-hour film shoot, Jackie faced a different kind of danger than anything he'd ever performed on screen. The restaurant fell silent as the three men approached his corner table. Other diners quickly paid their bills and left, sensing the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Jackie continued eating, outwardly calm, but every muscle in his body was coiled and ready. He'd grown up on these streets. He knew exactly what was happening. The leader of the three men was a mountain of a human being, easily 6 feet 4 inches tall and built like a concrete wall. His face bore the scars of countless street fights, and his dead eyes held no trace of mercy. This was Wong Kai-ming, known in the underworld as Iron Fist Wong, a Triad enforcer whose reputation for violence preceded him like a shadow. "Jackie Chan," Wong said, his voice low and gravelly. Jackie set down his chopsticks and looked up calmly. "I'm eating dinner. Make an appointment with my manager if you want to talk business." The second man, thin and wiry with nervous energy radiating from every pore, laughed harshly. "This isn't about business, movie star. This is about respect." Jackie sighed internally. He'd been expecting this confrontation for months, ever since he'd refused to appear at a charity event organized by the Sun Yi on Triad. The event was supposedly for orphan children, but Jackie's contacts in the police force had warned him it was actually a money laundering operation. When Jackie declined the invitation, citing scheduling conflicts, he'd unknowingly insulted one of Hong Kong's most powerful criminal organizations. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a knife. It's something far more unexpected. The third man, younger than the others but with eyes that held an old soul's worth of cruelty, reached inside his jacket. The unmistakable outline of a pistol became visible beneath the fabric. "Mr. Chan, you embarrassed our boss. You made him lose face in front of important people. That's not something we can ignore." Jackie's mind raced through his options. The restaurant was small, cramped, with only one exit. Fighting 3 armed men in such a confined space would endanger innocent bystanders, something he would never risk. But surrender wasn't an option either. These men hadn't come here to talk, they'd come to send a message, and that message would likely be written in blood. The elderly restaurant owner, a frail woman in her 70s, cowered behind the counter. Jackie could see her hands shaking as she pretended to clean dishes that were already spotless. She'd worked her entire life to build this small business, and now it was about to become a crime scene because Hong Kong's biggest action star had chosen her establishment for a quiet meal. "Look," Jackie said, slowly standing up while keeping his hands visible. "Whatever problem your boss has with me, we can work it out. I never meant any disrespect." Iron Fist Wong stepped closer, his massive frame blocking out the fluorescent light above Jackie's table. "Too late for apologies, movie boy. Our boss wants you to understand that in Hong Kong there are consequences for humiliating the wrong people." What the 3 Triad soldiers didn't know was that Jackie Chan's reputation for performing his own stunts had given him more than just fame and fortune. It had also connected him with every stunt coordinator, prop master, and special effects expert in the Asian film industry. Some of those connections had led to friendships with people who worked in very different kinds of entertainment, the kind where the special effects were designed to genuinely intimidate rather than merely amaze audiences. The thin man with nervous energy suddenly grabbed Jackie's wrist. "Enough talking. Let's go outside and finish this properly." That's when Jackie smiled. It wasn't his usual cheerful, camera-ready grin. This was something different. A smile that held secrets these three criminals couldn't possibly imagine. "Actually," Jackie said quietly, "before we go anywhere, I think you should see something." He slowly reached inside his leather jacket with his free hand. All three men tensed, expecting him to produce a weapon. Iron Fist Wong's hand moved toward his own concealed pistol, while the young one with the cruel eyes actually drew his gun halfway out of its shoulder holster. What Jackie Chan pulled out of his jacket wasn't a weapon at all. It was a photograph. But not just any photograph. This was a picture that would make three hardened criminals' blood run cold and send them fleeing from that restaurant like their lives depended on it. The photograph showed Jackie standing beside a man in an expensive suit, both of them smiling at a charity function. But it wasn't Jackie that made the three Triad soldiers' faces drain of color. It was his companion in the picture. "Do you recognize him?" Jackie asked softly, holding the photograph where all three men could see it clearly. Iron Fist Wong's massive frame seemed to shrink as he stared at the image. The thin man's nervous energy transformed into genuine terror. The young killer's hand, which had been reaching for his gun, began to tremble visibly. The man in the photograph was Dragonhead Lung, the most feared Triad leader in all of Hong Kong. Not just any Dragonhead, he was the supreme leader of the 14K Triad, the Sun Yeon's most bitter rivals. A man whose word could start wars between criminal organizations or end them with a single phone call. "This was taken last month at the Children's Hospital charity auction," Jackie continued, his voice remaining calm and conversational. "Dragonhead Lung and I have become quite good friends over the years. He's very interested in supporting legitimate charities, you see, real ones that actually help children." The three men stood frozen, their minds racing to process the implications of what they were seeing. In the Hong Kong underworld, attacking someone under the protection of a rival Triad leader wasn't just dangerous. It was a death sentence that would extend to their families, their friends, and anyone who'd ever done them a favor. Iron Fist Wong was the first to speak, his voice now carrying a tremor that hadn't been there moments before. "Mr. Chan." Jackie nodded understandingly. "I don't advertise my friendships. Dragonhead Lung prefers privacy when he's doing charitable work, but he's very protective of people he considers under his care. Very protective, indeed." The young killer slowly, carefully returned his pistol to its holster, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped the weapon. This changes things." "Does it?" Jackie asked innocently. "Because Dragonhead Lung specifically told me that if anyone ever threatened me because I wouldn't participate in fake charity events, I should let him know immediately. He has very strong feelings about people who exploit children for profit." The thin man was already backing toward the exit, sweat beading on his forehead despite the restaurant's air conditioning. "Mr. Chan, there's been a misunderstanding. We came here to invite you to dinner with our boss. A friendly dinner. To apologize for any confusion." Jackie smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. "That's very kind, but I'll have to decline. My schedule is quite full these days. Dragonhead Lung keeps me very busy with legitimate charity work." Iron Fist Wong, whose reputation for fearlessness had been built over decades of violence, now looked like a man who'd seen his own ghost. "We should go. Our boss will want to hear about this development. Please give him my regards," Jackie said politely. "And let him know that Dragonhead Lung asked me to pass along a message if I ever encountered any Sun Yeon members. He wanted me to remind them that Hong Kong is a small city, and everyone should be careful not to step on each other's toes." The three men couldn't leave the restaurant fast enough. Iron Fist Wong stumbled over a chair in his haste to reach the exit. The thin man was already out the door before his companions had taken 3 steps. The young killer paused just long enough to bow respectfully to Jackie before fleeing into the Hong Kong night. Jackie sat back down and picked up his chopsticks, returning to his wonton noodles as if nothing had happened. The elderly restaurant owner emerged from behind the counter, her eyes wide with amazement. "Mr. Chan," she whispered, "how did you? Who was that man in the photograph, really?" Jackie looked up from his bowl and winked. A very good friend who runs several legitimate charities. We met when I donated some props from Police Story to auction for the Children's Hospital. The truth was both simpler and more complex than the three Triad soldiers had assumed. Dragonhead Lung was indeed a real person, and the photograph was genuine. But Lung wasn't actually a Triad leader. He was a successful businessman whose nickname had come from his aggressive negotiating style in boardroom meetings, not criminal enterprises. Jackie had met him at a legitimate charity auction, exactly as he'd told the three thugs. But in the dim lighting of the restaurant, with adrenaline clouding their judgment and fear sharpening their paranoia, the three criminals had seen what they expected to see. Evidence that Jackie Chan was under the protection of their organization's most dangerous rival. The photograph had been Jackie's insurance policy, carried in his jacket for months after police contacts warned him about potential Triad interest in his refusal to participate in their money laundering scheme. He'd hoped never to use it, but when cornered by armed criminals, sometimes the best weapon isn't violence, it's letting your enemies' imaginations work against them. What the three men didn't realize as they fled through the streets of Hong Kong was that their hasty retreat had just created a legend that would spread through the underworld like wildfire. Within hours, the story had been told and retold in every Triad safe house, gambling den, and illegal brothel in Hong Kong. Jackie Chan, the story went, was under the personal protection of the most powerful criminal organization in the city. The evidence was irrefutable. 3 armed Sun Yi soldiers had confronted him, and he'd produced photographic proof of his connections that sent them running in terror. The Sun Yi leadership, when they heard the story, immediately issued orders that Jackie Chan was never to be approached, threatened, or even spoken to disrespectfully by any member of their organization. They couldn't risk a war with the 14K Triad over a movie star, especially when their own soldiers had confirmed Jackie's protected status. Meanwhile, the real Dragonhead Lung, the businessman, not the criminal, received an unexpected phone call from Jackie the next morning. "Mr. Lung," Jackie said, "I need to tell you about an interesting conversation I had last night. It seems your reputation as a tough negotiator has been somewhat exaggerated in certain circles." When Jackie explained what had happened, Lung laughed so hard he nearly choked on his morning tea. "So let me understand this correctly," he said. "You convinced 3 armed criminals that I'm some kind of crime boss, and now they think you're under my protection?" "Essentially, yes. I hope you don't mind that I used our friendship to avoid a potentially violent confrontation." Lung was quiet for a moment, then chuckled again. "Jackie, I've been trying to build a reputation as someone not to be crossed in business for 20 years. You've just given me the most effective character reference imaginable. Every businessman in Hong Kong is going to think twice before trying to cheat me in a deal. So you're not upset?" "Upset? I should be paying you for the marketing. Just promise me one thing. If anyone asks, neither confirm nor deny the rumors. Let them wonder." Jackie agreed, and true to his word, he never publicly discussed what happened that night in the Causeway Bay noodle shop. But the story took on a life of its own in Hong Kong's criminal underworld, growing more elaborate with each telling. Some versions claimed Jackie had shown the 3 men video footage of him training with Triad assassins. Others insisted he'd revealed a secret tattoo that marked him as an honorary member of the 14K organization. A few particularly creative storytellers claimed Jackie had demonstrated supernatural martial arts techniques that proved he was under mystical protection. The elderly restaurant owner became something of a local celebrity, as word spread that her humble establishment had been the site of a legendary confrontation between one of Hong Kong's biggest stars and the criminal underworld. Business tripled overnight, with customers hoping to sit at the same table where Jackie Chan had faced down 3 armed thugs with nothing but a photograph and nerves of steel. But perhaps the most significant consequence of that night was what it revealed about Jackie Chan's true character when faced with genuine danger. For years, audiences had watched him perform impossible stunts and defeat seemingly insurmountable odds in his films. But those were carefully choreographed sequences, performed with safety nets and medical teams standing by. In that Hong Kong restaurant, facing real criminals with real weapons and real intent to harm, Jackie had proven that his greatest strength wasn't his martial arts skills or his physical courage. It was his intelligence, his ability to think creatively under pressure, and his deep understanding of human psychology. He turned his enemies' assumptions against them, using their own fears and prejudices to create an escape route that required no violence and endangered no innocent bystanders. The three Triad soldiers never bothered Jackie again. In fact, word eventually reached Jackie through police contacts that Iron Fist Wong had relocated to mainland China shortly after their encounter, claiming he needed a change of scenery. The thin, nervous man reportedly gave up his criminal career entirely and opened a dim sum restaurant in Macau. The young killer with the cruel eyes joined a Buddhist monastery, seeking spiritual guidance after what he described as a profound encounter with his own mortality. Jackie continued his career, performing stunts that grew increasingly elaborate and dangerous. But those close to him noticed a change in his approach to personal security. He began carrying photographs of himself with various Hong Kong dignitaries, business leaders, and charity organizers, not as trophies of his success, but as insurance policies against future confrontations. The technique proved effective on several subsequent occasions, when overzealous fans or potential troublemakers approached him inappropriately. A picture truly was worth 1,000 words, especially when those words could prevent violence and protect innocent people. Years later, when Jackie achieved international superstardom through films like Rush Hour and the Karate Kid remake, he would sometimes share the story of that night in Hong Kong as an example of how creative problem-solving could be more effective than physical confrontation. He never identified the specific people involved or the exact location, respecting both their privacy and the complex social dynamics that had made his solution possible. During interviews with international press, Jackie would often reflect on how that night changed his understanding of conflict resolution. "In my movies, I solve problems with martial arts and elaborate stunts," he would explain to fascinated reporters. "But in real life, I learned that the most powerful weapon you can have is your ability to understand what your opponent fears most." The incident also influenced his approach to filmmaking. Jackie began incorporating more scenes where his characters resolved conflicts through wit and intelligence, rather than pure physical confrontation. Directors and screenwriters noticed this shift, and it became a defining characteristic of his later work, the idea that true strength comes from knowing when not to fight. "Sometimes," Jackie would tell interviewing journalists, "the best way to win a fight is to convince your opponents that fighting you would be the biggest mistake of their lives. And sometimes, that's easier than you might think." The photograph that saved Jackie's life that night remained in his wallet for years afterward, a reminder that in a world where violence often seemed like the only solution to conflicts, creativity and understanding of human nature could be far more powerful than any weapon. He would occasionally show it to close friends during quiet moments, sharing the story as a lesson about the importance of building genuine relationships and maintaining one's reputation for integrity. Dragon Head Lung, the businessman whose unintentional intimidation factor had saved Jackie's life, eventually became one of his closest friends and business advisors. Their partnership led to several successful charity initiatives throughout Asia, proving that sometimes the most unlikely friendships can create the most positive outcomes. The three Triad soldiers' hasty retreat that night became a cautionary tale within Hong Kong's criminal underworld about the importance of proper intelligence gathering before targeting anyone. Their failure to research Jackie's actual connections had not only embarrassed their organization, but had also inadvertently elevated Jackie's status to legendary proportions within criminal circles. And in a small noodle shop in Causeway Bay, an elderly woman still tells customers about the night. Hong Kong's biggest action star proved that real heroism isn't about how hard you can hit, it's about how smartly you can think when everything is on the line. The restaurant now displays a framed photograph of Jackie Chan on its wall, signed with the simple message, "To Mrs. Wong, thank you for the best wonton noodles in Hong Kong, and for your discretion that night. Your friend, Jackie.